All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Bordy, Chair of the Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist Advisory Committee. Thank you for being here today. Welcome, public, and welcome BRN staff. I'd first like to establish a quorum, and by doing so, I'd like to do a roll call. I'll start with myself, Sandra Bordy, present.
Karen Carp, present.
Kathleen Theobald, present.
Samantha, you have to unmute yourself.
Apologize. Samantha Polakowski, present.
And then Sandra, I know this is one of your first ones that you're managing through. A lot of times it helps to do roll call. And so you call out the name and then they respond present so that people are not waiting to find out when they should jump in.
Sure, I'll do that in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
So we've established that we have a quorum, correct? Yes, thank you.
Yes, correct. Reza, is there anything we need to do to address Karen being off camera?
Karen, if you're able to give us an update, if it's a technical issue and your broadband's not working or your functionality is not allowing the video, we can proceed and she can participate. Otherwise, we want to try to get her on camera.
This is
by the way, this is Reza Pejyahesh, Board Legal Counsel. I was just going to make a quick introduction of myself for the record.
This is Karen Carp, and it could be a technical issue as I am driving in my car. I'm so sorry, but I have tried going back and forth through the screens. I cannot seem to get myself on screen.
Okay, so Lori mentioned earlier it's a Bagley-Keene requirement. I think the kind of technical issues that are contemplated for the exception are like truly technical, glitches or something. It sounds like this is, we don't have it quite figured out how to enable it. What I'd suggest, if you can, of course, we want you to be safe. I'm not sure where you're en route to, but if you have the means to stop somewhere and work on it and get yourself on camera, that'd be fantastic. If not, you can stay on with your camera off. I don't think we can have you participate, but I think we're, looking to get through a couple of informational items anyways. So, you'll at least have the benefit of being able to hear it out. So
Okay.
Is that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll try and pull over and rejoin.
Okay. If it is an actual, glitch or technical limitation, such as your broadband not supporting the video feed, do let us know. But yeah, and if you need help from BRN staff, you can reach out as well.
Thank you.
All right, can we move forward with agenda item 2.0, please? All right, thank you. BRN moderator, would you please go over the general instructions for format of teleconference meetings, please?
Good afternoon. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. This WebEx question and answer feature has been renamed Slido, so if you want to look for it, it'll be Slido, Slido. We will also query our oh my goodness, I'm sorry, our in-person location at BRNHQ to see if there's any comments there, requests for comments there as well. I will then call the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then proceed to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. When your turn comes, you will be prompted to unmute. If your question can be answered, the committee will respond accordingly. When making your comment, speak about anything you believe is important for the members to know. Remember, committee members cannot address any item not on the agenda. Items not on the agenda at that moment, items that you would like to add to a future meeting, or items that will be discussed later on the agenda will be discussed at their correct times during the meeting. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when committee members or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute your microphone automatically.
Thank you so much. BRN moderator, would you please open the public comment for items not on today's agenda? Again, public comment at this time is for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature, now known as Slido. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Bordy, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. BRNHQ, do we have any public requests for comments?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window? And you have to unmute yourself, but I read your lips as yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. All right, agenda item 4.0 is information only in regards to data on file dispositions of disciplinary cases against CRNAs. And I believe this was submitted by our Vice Chair, Sarah Polakowski. I'm unsure if she's going to be presenting this information or if our Executive Officer, Lori Melby, will be doing that.
This is usually handled by the committee and I do not report out on this, but I jump in as needed.
Okay, Sarah, would you like to go ahead and report out on this agenda item, please?
I wasn't involved in this agenda item, I don't believe.
Let's take a look at who's assigned to the discipline subcommittee. Because that is typically the ones that manage this section of the board meetings, of the committee meetings. It's a standing item that is reported out at each one. And so it looks like the subcommittee for, oh, doesn't look like you guys have a subcommittee for this.
No,
So, got it. And then I have Macaulay messaging me too, saying, we added it. They don't have a subcommittee. Thank you, Macaulay. So
That makes me
in
feel better. I
alignment,
was worried for a moment.
that's okay. That's okay. In alignment with the other advanced practice advisory committees, we did start adding the disciplinary statistics to all of them to kind of align it best. This really just kind of shows that this is the complaints and the disciplinary actions that come into it. So let me fix that. It's not the complaints. Complaints are different than what we have as disciplinary actions. So you can see across the top, this is a beginning stage. We will update these tables in future agenda items to show year to year the number of practicing CRNAs as well, because that's important, right? So if we were to see this grow each year as in number of disciplinary cases, but not take into account the population, it would not be an accurate display of information. So right now, this just shows the totality of disciplinary cases for CRNAs. It does not quantify how many CRNAs are in each year. So we will be updating that. So you can see across the top, starting at 2018, is any practice violations. Last year, there were none. There's only been one so far this year. The 801 practice, so that usually comes in through insurance reporting. And you can see those stay relatively low at zeros and ones. OSD is out-of-state discipline. And so if a CRNA is operating in another state and they have disciplinary action taken upon their license and then they transfer into California, then we are notified of that and then proceed down that route. Conviction is the next one, and that actually is no criminal charges and conviction that may not be practice related and typically is not. Substance use disorder is also in there, and then sexual misconduct, and then you'll also see other down there, and that kind of is a catch-all phrase. So as you can see from 2018, sorry, to current day, CRNAs do not typically take up a lot of our disciplinary personnel time because they do have a very low incident of having any disciplinary action brought forth by our board. Any questions on this?
Yeah, this is Kathleen. I have a question. Are
Yes.
these individual instances, or might one or two of these overlap? So for instance, if somebody is out of state and yes, it was an insurance reporting, could that be the same person?
Not typically, no, because the out-of-state discipline comes in and it's handled completely separate. So it is individual. It's not combo.
Okay, so none of these would be the same person.
Not typically. Again,
Not
there might be a rare occasion. I can't talk back for what happened in 2018 and kind of do that, but typically each one is an individual case brought against an individual person.
Okay.
I can't say affirmatively that there was not one maybe in 2018 that was practice related as well as substance use disorder. I can't speak to that, but our norm is that it is all individual.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? And just a reminder, we will go ahead and add corresponding kind of population numbers of how many CRNAs were licensed during those specific ones. It does have this on the next slide, but it doesn't correlate well in the way that it is up there. So we will
Lori,
be able to
I'm
kind
sorry.
of pull that out. Yes. President?
I apologize for interrupting you. I thought you were winding it down. This is Reza, Board Counsel. I just had a thought, just for the sake of noting it, and maybe either yourself or Macaulay maybe note it, for these discipline statistics charts, referring back to the question of whether there was any overlap, maybe we can take a look at that in between and now and, our next, any of our advisory committees where one of these is presented, and just solidify that and make sure. And if there's a possibility of it, we could just throw an asterisk under these charts and just reference, there may be a possibility of overlap, or that there isn't, or whatever explanation is needed.
I was told by Shannon, our chief of enforcement, that it is individual, that it is not an
Excellent.
overlap. But I know that she was also put on the spot, so I just wanted to kind of verify that that is, but our typical practice is to report individual and not repeated.
I think, looking at the chart, in general, you could certainly have a case that's, based on out-of-state discipline that involved substance use and sexual misconduct and overlaps different categories. But in the classification for purposes of, this data, it may be recorded individual within a category, single category only. So good, thank you.
That was confirmed by our chief of enforcement. What I was alluding to on this active license by fiscal year is this top row, the highlighted row here of CRNAs, that would be put on top of the prior table to make it much more useful, so that you can see that, the case, we had, one disciplinary action this year, and we have the most licensees that we've ever had. So it's 3,337. And so that actually shows a drop in the percentage of CRNAs that had discipline. And so that would then also coincide with the 2,504 from 2018. If you were to back up on the slide here, and I don't have control of the slide deck, but you would be able to then correlate that with the number of people that had discipline brought next to them, and we'd be able to do a percentage, so we can show that the percentage is going down, and therefore CRNA practice seems to, at least statistically, show that it is safer. So that's some of the things that I would like to kind of adopt. I apologize to the public. I did not review the PowerPoint prior to it being posted. That's my miss.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
We can, it is information only. We can go out to public comment.
All right. Thank you. BRN moderator, would you please open this agenda item to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I would like to give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." CMM would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So I have a question, because I've heard about the medical board saying that the more citations they have, the better job they are doing. So it seems counterintuitive, right? So like you just said, I think, Loretta, that, the fewer citations that are occurring, the safer things are. I'm not sure how to interpret that with the medical board seemingly doing the exact opposite. So do you guys have any insight on that?
We do. So we have different laws. We'll start off with that. So the med board receives different complaints on different items and have different issues that they manage. Their practice is different than our practice. Additionally, with the med board, as well as the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Techs, they have laws in there that require employers to be mandated reporters. We do not have an employment mandated reporting for our state, for the registered nursing population, including our APRNs. So our employers could choose not to report to the board if they did not want to. I was making a practice statement and not a BRN specific statement. BRN, we look at business processes in BRN. Do we have complaints received? Do we have accusations filed? How quickly it takes us to get that? And that determines how well the BRN is doing their job. And that is purely processing, investigating, looking into items and taking care of what is brought in front of us. When we're looking at it from a practice perspective, the practice perspective is we're not receiving complaints. We are not getting the things that go through into an accusation that receive discipline. So the assumption would be is that is not occurring, or because it is not being reported to us. We would look at it just the opposite if we had an increase of complaints that came in that ended up in accusations, that ended up in discipline. If we were to see a trend where that was increasing, we would have to pause as a group here, take a look at what is occurring within our scope of practice, our Nurse Practice Act, because not everything is scope of practice, and see if anything is trending out and then address that as it came in. A lot of times what we see kind of depends on what's going on. So we might receive multiple complaints that come into our enforcement unit based on a social media outcry. So those complaints come in, they get looked at, they may get accusations filed, they may not get accusations filed. It depends on what is discovered as we go through the investigation and enforcement process. Additionally, we might see a decrease in complaints related to potentially COVID. When COVID occurred, there were no visitors at the hospital. There was no family at the hospital, etc. And so we did receive less complaints just strictly because there were less eyes on. And so there are many things that could influence complaints received. However, we do always monitor for trends and see what we can do to address that if we see that. And right now we see that complaints leading to discipline for CRNAs are trending down.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Committee Chair Bordy, there are no other public requests for comments on the Slido. BRNHQ, do we have any public requests for comments?
No, Mark, we do not.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, we'll move to agenda item 5.0, information only. This will be an overview done by Lori Melby, our executive officer, on the 2026 BRN Sunset Review process. So I'd appreciate it if Lori would speak to that. So to inform not only the advisory committee members of this very involved process, but also the public, please. Thank you.
Thank you. You were accurate in saying this is a very involved process. It is a very involved process. So starting on page 9 of the materials that are posted on our web, you will see just a kind of a background of what the sunset review process is. To be completely honest, it was pretty much a lift and shift from the legislative websites that address both the Assembly Business Professions Committee and the Senate Business and Professions and Economic Development Committee. And it talks about what their role is in the oversight of our board. There is some confusion that I always try to take an opportunity to clear up as much as we can. Is we have a 9-member board. Within that 9-member board, there are 5 RNs and 4 public members. That 9-member board is a policy setting board, and that is the board that is brought forth and considered for sunset review. That's the section that can be sunset and not continued. The Board of Registered Nursing, or the BRN staff, which includes our Assistant Executive Officer, our Chief of Licensing, and I could list all of the employees there that do the day-to-day running of the Board of Registered Nursing. They are not subject to sunset. So if we were to be sunset, the functions of the Board of Registered Nursing, issuing license, et cetera, would continue, but it would continue in a different manner. We would then become a bureau and fall completely under the Department of Consumer Affairs. I didn't include myself in that kind of overview as the executive officer, as being board staff. I am board staff, but my role is appointed by the 9-member board. So if that 9-member board is there, my role, or me serving in that position, is not a guarantee. I would have to go through the process and hopefully get absorbed by the Department of Consumer Affairs to be able to continue to employ me and have me work in an executive officer role. Now, with that, some of you guys may remember back in 2010, I believe it was, where our board was actually sunset. So when the sunset review process comes, we hope that there is a author. It could be an assembly member, a Senate member, that would introduce a bill that would prolong the 9-member board and all of the stuff that we do around that. Typically, that process starts in January and a bill is introduced in February, and it moves through the legislative process. That legislative process is very kind of time restricted and very methodical. That doesn't capture all the work that is done leading up to that. So what we're doing right now as board staff is we have a sunset report that we are writing. We're gathering a bunch of data. We're writing and answering a bunch of questions that has been given to us via the legislative areas. And we also give them information that we think would be helpful, where we can ask for changes. We can say, we noticed in this process, this needs to be updated. One thing that, coming from private sector, if I had a policy and procedure I wanted to update, I just updated it. That's not something that we're able to do as a state or governmental agency. Is all of our stuff is in statutes and then regulations. So if I see an area of concern, or if stakeholders, the public, see areas of concern and they want that addressed, it goes through this legislative or regulatory process. So we take this opportunity to really do a deep dive in all of the processes that we've been running these last 4 years and working through. And we will present, as part of our sunset report, any areas that we think might benefit from a legislative update. And so we do put that forward. It is reviewed, and the language of the bill is many times takes all that information into consideration and starts out. Now, the staffers at, within the various areas meet individually with stakeholders and have already begun doing that. They meet with various organizations, various lobbyists, and they learn from them what their perspective is of our board and what we can do better. And then they take that information forward and they either choose or don't choose to write language based on that. Sometimes if the language is not inputted into the bill that is carried through, it doesn't mean it won't be added to a separate bill. That doesn't mean it won't be tabled till the following year. And it doesn't mean that they haven't had conversations with me to see if it's something that we can implement outside of a legislative ask. So that information is absolutely taken into consideration and it is shared out and they decide kind of the best path forward. The sunset bills try to go through in a fairly cordial manner. They try not to do any kind of any items that would be fought vehemently by any particular group. What they don't want to see is to get towards the end and that bill not pass, especially for wanting the Board of Registered Nursing to continue. So if there are some highly sensitive areas that maybe could not be landed and agreed upon, those might be removed and moved to a separate bill to manage that. What happened in 2010 is there was a mistake in the language where it addressed, my understanding was addressed some retirement issues that around certain board personnel. And when it got to the governor's office, because it was an error and would have had some unintended consequences, it was vetoed. You can't edit a section out, you have to veto the entire thing. And so my understanding is that it vetoed the entire thing. And for a few months, it was our board was sunset. At that moment, that happens where the board is allowed to continue until the time that sunset date is, and that's typically January the following year. So if a bill is not introduced in February of next year, we will continue to operate with a 9-member board in all the fashion that we currently do until December 31st of 2026, and then we would not continue January 1 of 2027. What happened in that last occurrence is it went through, it did not get signed. In fact, it did get vetoed. The board continued to operate until the sunset date of December 31st of that year. The very next day, the 9-member board sunset, things were put into place to continue the processes of the BRN. And a bill was introduced in February with an urgency, and it was signed within and put forward with a majority vote and signed quickly. And we did not have to wait the entire year to re-up. And they did do some establishing of various criteria with board members coming in, and that's what we're currently under. We have been extended every single time since then. When you can be extended for 1 year, and we have experienced that where it was only extended for 1 year. That did happen when I first took this position. When I took the position in 2020, we were preparing for our sunset. They made mention to us that we would be doing a 1-year sunset. And they wanted us to come back because they knew that we were relatively new in our executive leadership team at the board, and they wanted to see some more. They did believe at that point that we would be able to continue to show that, and they would extend us for the full 4 years, and they did. So we were able to come back in 1 year, show that our team was working hard, getting everything done that we were supposed to be getting done, and they did extend us for the 4 years. This will be our first time going in front of the sunset review process, with all of us having a little more experience and a little more cohesive team than when we did when we first started. So I am looking forward to this. We did present this information with our board. We will present it at each one of our committee meetings as well, advisory committee meetings. And I'm open to any kind of questions that you might have. We are in the middle of writing our report, and we do plan to have our report ready for the October Nurse Practice Board Committee for review, and we do intend to bring it to the November full board for approval so that we can turn our report into the legislators in January. Any questions, comments from the committee? Does not look like it. Again, it is information only. So at this point, board moderator, we can go out to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you'll have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Bordy, there are no public requests for comments on the Slido WebEx question and answer feature. BRNHQ, do we have any public requests for comments?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 6.0, information only again. We'll be receiving a presentation from the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiology on future priorities for CRNAs in California. And I'll have invite Melanie Rowe, CRNA, the practice division chair from the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, to present that to us. Thank you.
And Melanie is in person with us here in Sacramento, so I want to make sure you guys can hear her okay.
Just testing the mic. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We can. We're not able to see her.
No, we can't. The way the room is set up, we can't. So unfortunately, sorry.
Hello, I am Melanie Rowe. I'm a CRNA, Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist, and the Practice Director for CANA, the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. AB 876, sponsored by Assemblymember Flora, is now on the governor's desk. We appreciate the BRN votes of support throughout this legislative process. If signed into law, it would codify key elements of CRNA practice currently supported by case law, Attorney General opinion, and BRN opinion. Even so, this bill does not address 3 longstanding issues that would promote the safety and well-being of the general public. Priority number 1, a delegation of tasks from the CRNA to RN or other staff. CRNA appreciates the thorough section on the BRN website about CRNAs that includes resources, related links, and historical documents. The BRN 1988 memo about the practice of the CRNA acknowledges the role CRNAs performing anesthesia services throughout the perioperative setting, including pre, intra, and post-operatively. Although the public can refer to the documents within this website and refer to the BPC code 2725E, that confirms the BRN is the only state agency that can define or interpret the practice of nursing, has not stopped state regulators from attempting to usurp the authority over the BRN when it comes to questions of CRNA scope. For example, CRNA ordering authority to issue perioperative orders to RNs and other staff is detailed in that 1988 BRN memo, but it is not codified in statute. Last year at Emmanuel Medical Center, CDPH surveyors challenged the CRNA's authority to order nurses to address patient needs in the recovery room, notwithstanding the chief physician anesthesiologist's approval of the CRNA's authority to address the patient's perioperative needs. The CDPH survey team pressured the hospital to remove CRNA authority to order nurses to carry out CRNA-ordered medications and treatment regimens in the recovery room, even though the order in this instance was for post-operative imaging X-ray to address a patient emergency. Regulatory uncertainty has created unnecessary delays for patients, including during patient emergencies, when time is of the essence. Hospitals should be given statutory reassurance to allow CRNAs to operate within their scope as set by the Board of Nursing, particularly in the case of patient emergencies. If signed into law, AB 876 gives clear authority to CRNAs to select and administer medications and therapeutic regimens in the course of carrying out an order for anesthesia services. Authority is also granted to CRNAs to select and administer medications and therapeutic regimens in cases of emergency. Therefore, all we are asking for is for the BRN to codify the authorization for CRNAs to order other nurses to carry out the medications and therapeutic regimens authorized by law and previously supported by the BRN for over 37 years for clarity. Priority number 2, independent practitioner involvement as voting members and medical staff. The second priority addresses artificial limits within Title 22 on the type of providers who may be voting members of hospital medical staffs. Current state law, BPC Code Sections 2282B and 2283A authorizes the medical staff of a hospital to include physicians and surgeons and other licensed practitioners competent in their respective fields who are non-physicians. Yet Title 22 regulations inhibit this flexibility of hospitals and outpatient departments by limiting medical staff membership to physicians, dentists, podiatrists, and clinical psychologists. Since regulations do not align with state statute, CRNAs are given an in-between status on the medical staff in which they are granted privileges but are not allowed to vote on matters involving anesthesia or otherwise participate in closed sessions, even when the physician members of the medical staff are seeking their advice. This comes up a lot in critical access hospitals and rural settings, where the exclusion of CRNAs from the medical staff often results in the exclusion of the only anesthesia provider from meaningfully participating in the medical staff. This in-between status disrupts the public's access to healthcare, particularly in the case where the medical staff fails to properly credential CRNAs, and CRNAs are not there present to fix it. All advanced practice registered nurses play critical roles in delivering primary, specialty, and for us, anesthesia care across a wide array of settings, whether working autonomously or part of interdisciplinary teams. Ensuring that CRNAs and other independent healthcare providers may serve as voting members of hospital medical staff, particularly when they are the hospital's sole anesthesia provider, is vitally important in ensuring public safety. Priority number 3, including a reference to CRNA in the regulatory definition of nurse anesthetist. A third and final priority is to incorporate the term CRNA, or Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist, into the BRN regulations defining nurse anesthetist. We'd like to recognize the CRNA Advisory Committee for their continued work in crafting nurse anesthesia regulations. We request that the CRNA Advisory Committee and the BRN define nurse anesthetist in the regulations to include our national title, which is Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist, CRNA. All nurse anesthetists or CRNAs must be board certified by the NBCRNA, the National Board of Certification and Recertification for Nurse Anesthetists, which is the nation's only certifying body for the initial, continued, and subspecialty certifications of the more than 62,000 CRNAs in the United States to practice anesthesia. CRNA is our official professional title and used frequently. therefore should be included in the regulatory definition of nurse anesthetist. CANA is committed to working with the BRN, legislature, and stakeholder organizations to ensure these reforms are enacted for the benefit of California patients, healthcare facilities, and providers alike. I'll take any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Melanie. Do any of the members have any questions or comments?
I will jump in. I don't have questions or comments, but I do represent our board and I do have some information that I would like to share out to really just kind of address some of the items that were brought up here. So the first one that I'm capturing, sorry, is hopefully the passing of AB 876. AB 876 is a bill that our board did support. We supported it in its initial form, as well as the subsequent forms that have come through various rounds of feedback throughout the legislative process. That's a very common process that occurs. Is the bill that was introduced is not the bill that is hopefully signed in. It is noted that the language and a lot of the comments that was brought up through this presentation was in that original bill language and has subsequently been edited out into the bill that we are hoping to be signed in and made effective January 1. A lot of that information that was requested and put into that bill was targeted in the statutory language. The reason that I bring that up is the only way that we can write regulations is if that is something that is supported in statute. If it is not in statute, it's not something that we can reference back to statute or support, we will not be able to write regulations. Regulations are to clarify statute, not create new law. So that is something that we will be looking at as we move forward with the regulatory process. Last year, when we started the regulatory process, it was noted, and I shared it very widely, that we have no regulatory language in our Nurse Practice Act that addresses CRNAs at all. We only have statutory language. There is no regulatory language. We don't have any regulations that clarify anything at this point. So the language in our Nurse Practice Act that governs the practice of the nurse anesthetist is what is in statute, and that is it. So that we're hoping with these additions that come from this bill that hopefully is signed into law that we can implement in January 1, that'll give us a broader ability to write additional regulations to provide some clarification on CRNA scope of practice. The one issue that was brought up is the issue on RN delegation by a CRNA. Currently, RN delegation by a CRNA is supported in the RN scope of practice. That is not something that is not allowed. Any RN can delegate to another RN or even an unlicensed assisted personnel based on their assessment of the competency of that RN. And you can ask them to do that. The issue that becomes the concern is whether or not an RN can take an order by a nurse anesthetist. So hopefully, once we get this language in, we will have the Department of Consumer Affairs regulatory attorney look at the language that we've been working on to see whether or not it is something that we were given that authority with the updated language that is hopefully signed in. We won't know that until everything is signed in and it's taken a look at, and then we'll be able to draft regulations that clarify based on the updated statutory language. The next section that I wanted to address was the comment that was put out that the Board of Registered Nursing is the only entity that can interpret the practice of our RNs and our advanced practice RNs. That's correct. However, that is done through the legal process of writing regulations. And absent of writing regulations that interpret, we have very little authority. So anything that we interpret regarding scope of practice has to be tied back to either statute or regulations. So even though we do have 2725E and I could use that, I have to have it tied back to something that is of substance in law that I could say per Business Professions Code 2725B4, it says here, therefore we can do this. And that is how my role and the rest of the BRN is required to work. And that goes directly back to the prior agenda item where we were talking about sunset. The only way that we are able to do the roles and any of the activities that we do is it has to be supported in the statute and the regulations that not only define the practice of nursing, but also what the Board of Registered Nursing can or cannot do. So we are limited by the laws in our Nurse Practice Act on what we can and cannot do. So that our intention, once this bill is signed and we start working on the updated regs, is to codify in regulations what we can with the updated language. Again, remembering that the Board of Registered Nurses supported the initial introductory language that was put forth in February of last year, and then also understanding that that language was greatly decreased to what is currently being passed. So we will have to take a look at what we can actually get in regulations that's been supported in statute. So it's a different picture than what we had prior to this language hopefully passing, but it also is also a different picture moving forward than what we thought we would have when this bill was first introduced. The next one I wanted to address was the med staff titling with Title 22. That is not in statute. That was not something that was included in statute, and it is not being put forth and signed with this bill. My understanding of that is because we operate under the Nurse Practice Act, and med staffing, et cetera, is under Title 22. That's a completely different governmental agency, and that is through the California Department of Public Health. We have no bearing on that. Evidence to that is you can look at med staff language in our Nurse Practice Act around nurse practitioners. And even though it is in our Nurse Practice Act that nurse practitioners can be eligible, we have no way to enforce that because it's CDPH's laws that have to be updated to address that. So even if that would have been put into effect through this statutory language, which it was not, it really doesn't change what CDPH does. They have to update their laws to be able to accommodate that. And that is not within the Board of Registered Nursing. You said that there was 3 issues, and I believe the other issue was title protection. More broadly, if I'm capturing that incorrectly, I'm sorry, please jump in and correct that. With that, we might be able to do some language within some regulatory context. But I want to make sure reference back to our current statute, where our current statute currently defines what a nurse anesthetist is. And so we may be able to expand on that. Again, it would come down to what our regulatory attorney would be able to take a look at and see if that's something that we can do. And if we do, understanding the regulatory process is going to be key. As we meet with you guys as subject matter experts, as we put things forward, there may be what you guys consider a disconnect from what you guys want as subject matter experts versus what we can provide as a regulatory board. We may not be able to give you guys everything that you want as a profession because we are limited by the laws that govern us. And so again, back to that statement that says, if it's not in statute, we cannot create new law with regulation. We simply have to clarify the current statutory language and provide some guidance if we can. So through that process, we will go through that process. We will write those regulations. We will put it back out here to the CRNA Advisory Committee. We will take your input. Again, your input is recommendations to our board. It does not mean we have full authority to move exactly what you guys want through. And our board may choose to amend it in a way that may not be satisfactory to you guys as well. And I want to be completely transparent with that because of the limitations that the change in the statutory language provided. So because again, the February introduction language is not what we have as final, we have very minimal language that's coming out of this bill. It was grossly stripped down. And so we will do the best that we can with the language that made it through to get you to the clarification that you guys need in your practice settings to continue to practice as you always have. That has been the big push throughout this entire process, is that we are not trying to expand your scope of practice or change your scope of practice. We are merely trying to capture what you guys have been doing for the past 40 years. So that is our intent, and that is what we will attempt to do. Understanding also that the regulatory process has to be posted for public comment. When it is put through the Board of Registered Nursing and reviewed through the Department of Consumer Affairs and cleared through agency, it is submitted to the Office of Administrative Law. When it is submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, it goes to a public comment period. We can, and I fully expect to receive public comment from many organizations and many individuals. Whether they support the language or whether they have conflict with the language, we have to address every single one of them. That response is then brought back and forth in front of our board for review and acceptance. And if our board agrees on that, we will go ahead and move forward. If our board decides to change the language of the regulations based on the comment period, they have every ability to do so. If they change it and it's just kind of wordsmithing and it's very simple, it goes out to a short public comment period. If there is great changes that change the effect of the regulations that were previously put out there, it does have to go out for a longer public comment period. We will have to respond to any new public comments that come in, and that will go back in front of our board. Additionally, at any point, a person can request a hearing on the regulations, and we will hold a hearing on the regulations and the language in there and receive comment through that matter as well. So just like with the legislative process, what was put forth in February is not what we're hoping to be signed by the governor and put into an effective January 1. Understand that that has a possibility of occurring here as well. What you guys put forth in your advisory committee may not be what is passed final through the Office of Administrative Law by our board once we go through that process. That process is typically a 1 to 2 year process, depending on how quickly it moves, depends on how many comments we get, depends on how, if there's hearings, and up to and including a lawsuit could be filed that would ask us to stop all regulatory efforts at that point, and we would have to work through that. So it is not a cut and dry process. With what we start with is what we end with. So I want to be completely transparent with that. We have a really great regulatory subcommittee that we've been working diligently with. And we have some solid regulations that we plan to amend based on the signing of this law. And we do anticipate that we will be able to address many of these items as long as they're within the jurisdiction of the BRN. What we will not be able to do is do any med staff addressing at all with the titling. But I do feel pretty confident that we'll be able to address the CRNA to RN work relationship throughout this process. And I do think that we could clarify the use of the term CRNA, et cetera, throughout that process as well. So I do think that we'll be able to come to some kind of a compromise with what this new statutory language can provide us, but reminding you guys that just as with the legislative session, we weren't able to get everything that our board supported in February. We may not be able to get all that you guys are asking for now, even in the regulatory aspect, because absent support in statute, we can't do that.
Thank you, Lori, for that in-depth responses to all of those priorities that Melanie presented. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board, on the advisory committee, have any questions, comments?
Okay. And this was information only again. And so at this point, we can go out to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Brian Tune would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Brian, if you're on a computer, there's a small window that opens up possibly behind all the windows that you have open that says unmute me. If you're on your phone, I want to say it's *67 or *6, *9. Committee chair, I guess request direction. What would you like me to do with Brian?
Brian, are you able to connect or not?
He was able to type that he wanted to make a comment. The option is that you can type into that same comment section, what you intended to type, send it to verbally, give us if you're not able to figure out how to come off mute and speak.
Does he still have the means to type into the chat? So maybe he can
Yeah, it's still open.
further type whether he's having technical difficulties unmuting, or our preference is that you do make your own comment verbally, but if you're unable to mute for the sake of getting your input, you can perhaps just put your comment there and we can read it out. Moderator, can you just remind Brian the Slido key is what he's looking for, or whatever it is on the smartphone?
Yeah, it's Slido, but well, he would have found that if he was able to put the I want to make a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, so all of that worked and he was able to access that. He's just not coming off mute. It's still showing that his mic is muted. And it is up in the section that allows him to come unmuted. We have a list in front of us that shows when he's been elevated to be able to unmute. It just looks like he's not able to. What I don't show here is whether or not he's on a computer or a phone. Board moderator, do you have anything like that?
No, it doesn't show. It doesn't say.
Okay. And because what we've noticed in the past is if they're on kind of a desktop computer, some don't have mics. Some don't have an ability to work that way. But if you're on a laptop, most laptops have mics and video built in. It looked like he just dropped off, so he's no longer there.
No, he's there. He's there. I just wanted to. I made him put him in the panelist to see.
Oh, you put him in the
So
panelist.
it looks like he's on a computer. He's not on a phone.
Okay. And so he is now up in the panelist section. I'm not seeing it.
No, I put him back in the attendees. I just wanted to see.
Okay.
Either way, he would still have to unmute himself.
Okay.
There's a window that pops open.
Committee members, are you guys aware of who Brian Toon is? Is that somebody that you know that that you can reach out to? And assist, usually people are known in public comment by the committee members, is that they don't usually show up just randomly in these advisory committee meetings. So I was just kind of doing that last ditch effort. If you guys have any ability to contact him.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh my
There
God,
you
I'm so
go.
sorry, you guys. That was so dramatic. So I will
problem at all.
quickly move forward here. I apologize. I was unable to unmute myself and I was working feverishly to do it. Brian Toon, Executive Managing Partner of Central California Anesthesiology Solutions. We staff 22 ambulatory surgery centers and 5 hospitals. And I really appreciate the board and Lori's description of everything related to 876 and appreciate the support of it. And just wanted to reiterate the humongous importance of CRNAs being able to provide preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative, peri-anesthetic being the actual term, orders to the RN. This, by and of itself, if it was not able to move forward, would stop patient care in its tracks. And it is exactly what happened in Modesto, and we don't want to see that happen again. I know that the board understands this, and I just wanted to take this 2 minutes to reiterate how critically important at the ground level this is for us practicing CRNAs for both practice and our patient cares. So thank you. This is a standard function that is operating currently and has been, as Loretta told us, for the last 40 years. And we just don't want anything that would step in the way or create any barriers of this for both patient care and clinical practice. Sorry about the technical issues.
Not a problem, Brian. Thank you. And yes, we do have the historical documentation on our website that RNs have been able to follow CRNA orders throughout the practice. And like I shared, our intention is to support the practice that has been occurring for the last 40 years, that we're not trying to expand or alter in any way. And we do intend to address it in any process we can, including regulations, to ensure that that is clear and not something that is left to question.
Hugely appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Bordy, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any requests for comments in BRNHQ? I'm sorry, did you say no?
I said no. Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Perfect, thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. All righty. We don't have any other agenda items for this advisory committee meeting today. So we will conclude the Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist Advisory Committee meeting today, September 18th, 2025, adjourning at 4:09 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.